Are you ready to untangle from your past, recover from heartbreak, and revive your life? This is Soul CPR with your host, Ann Papayotti. We've all had soul-crushing experiences and lost ourselves in our pain, but there is a way out. On this podcast, Amazon best-selling author, award-winning life coach, and advice columnist Ann Papayotti helps us navigate the path from heartbreak to healing. So now, please welcome the host of Soul CPR, Ann Papayotti.
Welcome to Soul CPR. I'm so very glad you're here. This is only our 6th show so far, and we've already talked about some pretty difficult things that many of us go through. And today will be something that's often kept in secret. We'll talk about why it's kept in secret and how it lingers like a shadow in our lives until we finally bring it into the light and disempower it once and for all. We're talking about domestic violence and abuse. Now, I find that many people do not understand the definition of domestic violence, and so they downplay their personal experiences. And I know I did. And it took some very direct questions from my then divorce attorney. And I mean questions that knocked the breath out of me. I danced around them trying to explain and almost defend the man I was divorcing. It was the "he never actually hit me" response that I heard as it actually came out of my mouth. And it was my attorney's reaction to it that left me startled. He followed up with, "In what ways did he hurt you? And what was the relationship like before it escalated to something physical?" In that moment, I felt naked and that he could see right into my very soul. You see, I was finally leaving my marriage after years of mental, emotional, and verbal abuse. And I had recently confirmed adultery, which gave me the legal and religious grounds I needed to end the marriage. And the adultery allowed me to stand up to my husband and say, "You broke the covenant." And he couldn't argue with me on that. He couldn't put me in my place, make excuses, or convince me that it was my fault. I had found a way out. And, people had witnessed some of the verbal abuse, like when he'd get careless in front of them and call me an idiot, B-faced C. I don't know if I can say all those words online, but it was a string of vile words that I'd never in my life heard someone speak, much less say to me or about me. And it was coming from the man who vowed in front of these same friends to love, honor, and cherish me until death do us part at our wedding. So it was a very confusing time, and I found myself making excuses for his stress. And I don't know really whether that was to protect him or to save me from my embarrassment and humiliation, because I really had nowhere to run and hide. Nothing I felt I could say or do. I don't know. I froze. I was in shock. And that was my stress response, I guess, in the beginning of these verbal assaults. But as this became more prominent in private, at least, I fought back, defending myself with words which just provoked more anger from him, with physical posturing to teach me not to talk back. And then I guess I began hiding. And I guess that would be called the flight response. I would stand and take it, and then go to the sofa and lie down and cover myself with a blanket. And this was his favorite because I was now a defeated victim. All of this led to why I was at this time divorcing him, but it took the adultery to give me the "everyone will understand this. I won't have to talk about how I've lived." But I had never until that moment in my attorney's office admitted that there had been physical abuse, because it made me feel like I had accepted something so terribly unacceptable. And all of it had been unacceptable and humiliating, but nothing had left a black eye. It was my soul that was battered. With no physical wounds And the way he could always explain everything away, like, you should really be more careful. You sure are clumsy. Why would anybody believe me, was a thought. I mean, he was the tall, dark, handsome, life of the party charmer. But every word, every threat, and every angry kicking of my leg, crushing squeeze of my hand, pull of my hair, push of my chest, every destruction of my belongings, every threat to push me down the staircase, and every literal spit in my face had led me to this moment to speak it out loud to someone who could see right through my facade. And so I'm very grateful to my lawyer who asked those questions and didn't let me off the hook, as speaking my truth allowed me to begin my journey of righting myself, finding myself, reclaiming myself, while doing the difficult work of navigating, breaking free from a narcissistic, abusive partner. It wasn't easy. It isn't easy, because divorce does not remove an abuser from our lives. You still must learn how to cut them off, or if you are a co-parent with them, as I was, as I am, how to boundary your relationship. So today I'd really like to begin by defining domestic violence. The Department of Justice's definition is this: domestic violence is a pattern of abusive behavior in any relationship that is used by one partner to gain or maintain power and control over another. Domestic violence can be physical, sexual, emotional, economic, psychological, or technological actions, or threats of actions, or other patterns of coercive behavior that influence another person within an intimate partner relationship. This includes any behaviors that intimidate, manipulate, humiliate, isolate, frighten, terrorize, coerce, threaten, blame, hurt, injure, or wound someone. Now, today, we're going to be focusing on intimate partner relationships. Just know that domestic violence laws, as I understand them, though they may differ by state, do apply to households, which can be intimate partner, parent to child, child to parent, sibling to sibling, family member to an elder, and so on. Any relationship within a shared home, basically. Now, moving on, I want to share another definition with you. This is on the World Health Organization's website. Intimate partner violence refers to behavior within an intimate relationship that causes physical, sexual, or psychological harm, including acts of physical aggression, sexual coercion, psychological abuse, and controlling behaviors. This definition covers violence by both current and former spouses and partners. Did you hear that? I love that this definition includes former spouses and partners. My experience, as I mentioned earlier, remained difficult after divorce. There was stalking, threats of suicide, and other concerning behaviors, even an incident with a handgun. The control and psychological abuse continued in different forms until I was able to get stronger, wiser, and use the law and the leverage I had to force him into getting help for himself and into staying away from me. Now, some results of that were that there was a period of time that he lost visitation privileges with our son. He had to attend therapy and anger management classes. And when visitation resumed, he was no longer allowed to pick up or drop off our son at my home. It was to be done at a public location. And even then, I had someone represent me for quite a while. I was blessed to have my parents willing and available to do that for me. Now, listeners, I knew at 3 months into my marriage that I'd made a mistake, that his treatment of me changed from the year and a half that we had dated prior to the wedding. So why did I stay? You may be asking. Why does anyone stay? While everyone's reasons may be unique to them, the one common element I found in my work with survivors is fear. Now, after being gaslighted and isolated and psychologically broken down in twisted ways by the person who is also the one who says they love you and may behave as if they love you on some days, and on whom you may be dependent financially because of how you created your family agreement can complicate matters of what to do or what you fear. And in my case, I feared judgment. I feared judgment from my community, my church, my family. I held myself to a high standard of conflicting values, of for better or worse, or that I must deserve this. I'd made a commitment, I must stay. That if I just wouldn't set him off, if I could learn to make his life easier, if I could change, maybe he would change. I'd been a high achiever my whole life. I feared failure. I'd succeeded at everything. Maybe I failed, but I tried again until I succeeded. Why was I failing at this? It must be something. There must be something to do. And I feared him, literally. He was a 6'4" former football player, physically overpowering me easily as a 5'3" petite stature. And most of all, I feared my son being in his company without me. Ladies and gentlemen, domestic violence knows no borders. It is a worldwide problem. There are no geographic, demographic, or socioeconomic boundaries. The data is for the United States that 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. It's staggering. You or someone you know or someone in your family is most likely going to experience it. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, I'll introduce you to my friend Leigh Ann, whom I met in high school. And although we had very different childhood backgrounds, we both experienced abuse in our marriages. We'll hear her story, why she stayed, and the aftermath that the abuse has had on her life. So don't go far. We'll be back in a heartbeat with more Soul CPR.
Mike Zorich, a 3-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorich, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorich has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
And welcome back to Soul CPR. It's now my pleasure to introduce you to my dear friend Leigh Hays. And I'm going to call her Leigh Ann because that sweet Southern double name is how I met and will always think of her. She's an experienced, versatile marketing and communications professional with a track record of success in crisis communication, PR media relations, brand and campaign development, integrated marketing, event planning, and strategic planning. Leigh Ann is a creative, out-of-the-box thinker with a reputation for solving problems and developing campaigns that build strong brands with a positive ROI. She is currently the Director of Sales and Marketing at the Trustful Tribune. And more than all of this, she is a beautiful soul. Leigh Ann, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Anne. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I'm so glad that you're here. Now, for the audience to know, Leanne and I graduated high school together, but we weren't close in high school. We really got to know each other during a reunion event, and it was actually a multi year high school reunion, and it was a music festival reunion. We had a lot of talent out of our high school in a certain period of years. And I was helping coordinate this event with the lead musician, if you will. And we thought it would be fun to have one vocalist from each of the classes. And I said, I know who I want from class of 81. And I said, I want Leigh Hays. And he was all about it. He had worked with you before. And I said, she has to sing Stevie Nicks. Do you remember that event and what song you sang?
Oh, I do. It was such a thrill. And it was the first time I'd been back on stage in many, many years. So it was such a complete thrill to see everybody, but experience that moment with everybody again. And I sang Landslide.
Landslide, that's right. And it was so beautiful. It gave me chills. And anyway, that event was very special. And your son got on stage with you then as well, didn't he?
He did. He got up and played with the group, and we did "Take the Load Off Annie" by the Weight. And what a thrill that was to be on stage with him for the first time ever.
Wow. I didn't realize it was the first time ever. I just remembered that he was there. That's amazing. And how old was he then? Do you remember?
Oh gosh, he was in his early 20s because he was still working on his master's degree in coaching at UNA, and so that would have been his early 20s.
That's amazing. There was someone else who became special in your life who was on stage at that event too. Who was
That
that?
that is true. That would have been Jack, and obviously grew up with him, but we had not ever dated or anything. But we connected at that reunion and built a very, very strong alliance and partnership and relationship for more than a decade until we lost him 3.5 years ago during COVID.
Yeah, yeah. That was a lot of beautiful things came out of that one reunion, and your relationship with Jack is one, and the fact that our relationship really took off from that day. That's when we really started becoming close. We it's blossomed from that point on. I remember giving you a gift at that reunion that was sort of an inside joke. Do you remember what that was?
Did and I have it here with me today.
You do.
I kept
Body
it over
on
6 years. Yeah,
tap.
body on
For
tap
that,
shampoo. Now I wonder
yeah,
why Anne
I
might have
wonder
given
why.
me this. It was probably because one of us ended up one night with beer on our heads. We're not going to say which
Mm.
one, but I think you can probably guess it was not Anne.
Well, yes. And that was, again, from high school. Leanne and I seem to have this thing. It's no wonder that we would end up loving one another. We tended to have dated the same guys, have loved the same guys throughout our life, not at the same time. It just worked out
Yes,
that way. And there was an incident in high school where one of us had beer dumped on our hair. And for those of you who are too young to remember, there was a shampoo popular back in our days called Body on Tap shampoo. So anyway, that was an icebreaker and in our relationship, and we are now the closest of friends, and I'm very happy to be able to say that. And anyway, Leah, so thank you for being here, and that was just a fun memory to share. As we as since that reunion, and as Leanne and I have become closer friends and shared more about our lives, one connection we also found that we had is that we both ended up in domestic violent, abusive marriages. And I guess we discovered that on a call nearly 10 or 12 years ago. And here we are. And I know that we also talked about one day we're going to do something. We're going to work together on that, on this issue. And here we are. This is our
Yeah.
first time to do something public, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Um, I said in the opening segment that domestic abuse knows no borders and boundaries. And there's a contrast in our childhoods and our backgrounds. I came from a stable two parent family where disagreements were seem to have been settled behind closed doors. I mean, I think I can count on one hand anytime voices were raised between my parents. I think I saw my mom cry because my dad brought another puppy home. If that tells you anything. And we did have a lot of hunting dogs at one point in my backyard, but uh, they got mad at each other, but there was no violence. There was no abuse in my home. I mean, my dad did bring home wounded squirrels and all kinds of varmints that my mom was not happy about. My parents were traditional and strict and maybe overprotective, and I was, perhaps naive when I left home. And my first controlling relationship was actually with a girlfriend in college that manipulation occurred and controlling behaviors. And I didn't have to leave that relationship. She did. But it left me feeling unworthy and unlovable. And it left me primed for, it's like a lamb, going astray from a flock. I was primed for the wolf to come in, who was my first husband. So in contrast to my childhood, tell us a little bit about yours, if you don't mind.
Um, well, mine was totally different. And interestingly enough, the theme of this, one of the many themes of violence, is your reticence to talk about it. And you did not talk about it, period. But I did grow up in a home where it was a volatile situation. My mom was beautiful, stunning, funny, miss her every day. Uh, but she had her own issues, and she was married 7 or 8 times. I honestly can't remember the count. She remarried my dad a couple of times. She remarried my stepfather several times. There was another man, but all of the relationships have volatility. All of her relationships. And that's not to say they were all her fault either. But there was constant volatility in my life, to the point that I probably didn't know how to discern it, because it became the norm for me. I knew I was the one that always had to pick up the pieces, and I didn't like it. But after a while, you become numb to some of it. So I too was a prime suspect, or uh, uh, someone that was really, placed to be vulnerable to a narcissist, and I was.
Yeah, yeah. So, what can you tell us about that, then about meeting and then marrying your ex husband?
Well, it's kind of a humorous story, and I want to preface this by saying there's good in every marriage, even the really really bad ones. So was good, especially at the beginning. But I met him on a job interview, actually, and he didn't hire me. But the joke was, several years later, he called me and asked me out for a date. So that was how we got together. I was working for Business Alabama Monthly. I thought he called because he wanted to buy some advertising. And I stayed up all night, made this huge proposal. My boss had been about teasing me all morning. I told you so. I told you were missing this count. And I put together this huge proposal, and we went to lunch, and he told me that he was not interested in buying advertising, but he would like to ask me out for a date. And so that was how it all started. He had two beautiful children, His first wife, unfortunately and very sadly, passed away. And he was everything I could have imagined in a Prince Charming. Everything I
Mm.
wanted. Handsome, intelligent, funny, um, kind. He shared our same values, I thought. Politics, the same politics. And I thought. I didn't find out until much later in the marriage that it wasn't necessarily what I thought. And truly, it's important to understand that narcissists are the best chameleons on the planet. They can present any picture that they want to present, and their narrative, whatever it is, can change daily, is their truth for the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
And I believed it. I felt, I mean, madly in love with those children. Oh my God. Sorry.
Yeah.
Very much in love with him.
Yeah.
And
Of course.
it was like my dream of coming from a very unstable upbringing, no matter that there was love in it too. But to have a family and stability
Yeah.
are what I thought was where we were headed. And that did not turn out to be the case.
Did not. Yeah. I see that it's still emotional for you, of course, and it's been just to give a perspective to the audience. How long has it been since your divorce?
Oh, um, I honestly have to add it up in my head. It's been over 20 years.
Yeah. I just want people to understand that this is how it can still affect you. I love that you brought up about the chameleon and their ability to do that. It just reminded me that my ex-husband told me, literally, he said the best sales job he ever did was getting me to marry him. And as
Wow.
I mentioned in the first segment, it was at 3 months into the marriage that he started showing me the other side of him. Um, Thank you for sharing that. So there weren't you, like you said, this I can see that contrast coming from that instability to something. Here's a ready-made family, and your whole idea of Prince Charming after your mom's contrast to your mom, the in and out and back and forth with the men in her life, and here's this person with a ready-made family that you could just walk into. It sounded so I feel it for you. So, when do you recall recognizing abuse? What was the first sign? What did the first thing look like or sound like? And how did it escalate?
Interestingly, in retrospect, and I did not recognize it at first at all, but in retrospect, the red flags were there from the very
Okay.
beginning. I just didn't see them. I didn't
Okay.
know how to see them, and I didn't want to see them. And it was a slow progression. It wasn't something that just snapped overnight and boom. It was a very slow, almost calculated progression of our son was born. He really didn't want me to have anything to do with any of my former friends. He put a wedge there. He really did not care for my family, and he wanted to put distance there, and he did, and he put a wedge there. Um, he did not want me to work. And so for the first 5 years, I did not work. I did get a job at a preschool, and I loved it. I had the 3-year-olds, and my son and daughter were both at the same program, and it was a Mother's Day out. But after that first year, he forced me to quit. So it was a slow process that even finally got to the point that he didn't want me going to the grocery store.
Yeah.
Um, you know, so those were the
Yeah.
first
That's isolate.
signs.
Yeah. I and that's what I want people to recognize and hear, that it is a slow breakdown. It's not, there's an isolation that starts, like you said, from family and friends, and then there's a pulling you away right out of the working world. Yeah. And then not wanting even the grocery store. So it was getting that far. Um, so how did it escalate into more? What did that look and sound like? If you can share, if you don't mind.
Sure, no, I don't mind. The emotional and verbal abuse started during that same period of time of you're stupid, you're incapable, you're not a good person. And it was so easy for me to believe, even though I knew that I was a good person, my self-esteem was already going into this relationship damaged, and it was very easy for him to pick up on that. So it started with the put downs. You're just not good at math, you know, you're never going to get it, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, to when I did start standing up for myself, and I did. And anybody who knows me well knows that um, I can fight back. I can be a little mouthy, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I did stand up for myself, and it made it worse. Um, and that's when the real physical part of it started. You mentioned the size difference between you and your ex-husband, and our size difference was very similar. He was 6'3", I was 5'3". Um, he never struck me. And I think that is such an important point that you make, because even in my own head, even when I knew he should not be doing what he was doing, he never struck me. He never struck me.
Mhm.
That's what I
Yeah.
said to myself, um,
Mhm.
to make it better. So
Yeah.
it, it became a situation where, and he didn't do it in front of the kids. He did not do it in front of people ever. He was very careful about that. But he might shut me in a laundry room and hold me against the wall and put his head against my head and scream in my face for 30 minutes or an hour until he broke me. And he did break me. Hate to use those words, but he broke me more than once. Or he might take me into the bathroom or a closet and beat my head, bang my head up against a wall, or
Yeah.
pull me out of bed when I was asleep at night by my feet into the floor. Um, he might stay up for 2 nights in a row, 3 nights in a row on a tear, a tangent. I had to get up and go to work the next morning, but I was not allowed to go to bed. And if I did, there was going to be a huge price to pay. Um, so that's when things started shifting, and I started realizing that I was in serious trouble. I was estranged
Yeah.
from my family at that point, and I did actually seek out counseling at that time.
Okay. So, uh, that was going to be my next question, was did you keep this secret somehow? But so you were estranged from your family, so you couldn't share with them. Sounds like you went to a professional. What about friends? Was there anybody that you had that you could talk to at that time, or were you trying to keep it a secret like I did, fear of judgment? Or was there any fear in letting a neighbor know, or was there anyone to talk to? Or were you, if you were
There
back at work?
wasn't
Oh,
anyone to talk to, and but I didn't investigate that alley either because I was too frightened. There was
yeah.
certainly a lot of threatening things that I was never allowed to tell people that were, he kept me and our life way at arm's distance between other people. And at that point in time, he had a very high profile job, um, and very
Yeah.
powerful. And
Yes.
had to be very careful with that aspect of it too. Um, I knew the retaliation would be awful. So I did seek out professional help because I felt like I needed guidance to how to deal with this. At that point in time, I was not ready to leave the marriage because of fear, because of lack of
Mm-hmm.
income, and because of the children. And
Yeah.
I felt
So,
like being a buffer for them was
yeah.
extremely important because he didn't just leave it at me. He was very hard on our son and his
Okay.
oldest son.
So it sounds like, but you were look how to get help for yourself on how to stay in, how to deal with it.
How to
And
deal with it.
we're going to take how to deal with it and stay in. So we're going to take a short break here. And when we come back, I'm going to ask Leanne, why didn't she leave? She gave us a little bit there, but we're going to go a little bit bigger in that because that's the primary question that everyone asks or gets asked. And people have their own answers and it gets deep. So don't go far, and we're going to be back in just a heartbeat with more Soul CPR.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio, as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com.
Welcome back to Soul CPR. Today we're talking about domestic violence and the aftermath, and we're going to get to the aftermath. But right now I have my guest, Leigh Hays, here sharing her story. And Leigh, we're up to that question that everyone gets asked, why didn't you leave? And you were just sharing that you had reached out for help to a professional counselor to help you learn how to stay at this point, to give you some skills, coping skills and strategies. So for the people that are saying, like, why didn't you go? Why didn't you leave? Tell us a little more about that, please.
Well, first, I'm going to apologize because I've got a puppy over here.
All right.
Yeah, so he's making a little noise, but it's a great question and a very honest question for anyone to ask. And there's a multitude of answers, and all of them are very real for the person that's going through this at the time. Fear was huge for me.
Mhm.
My obligation to my children was huge to me. I think I mentioned at the very beginning that this having a family unit and that security was very important to me. So that was something that I was trying to keep and protect and maintain. I was slowly over time, he killed the love that I had for him, but I was still trying to find a way to make the marriage work. And part of me in my own head believed that it was my fault, that
That's
I
amazing.
was still gets you to this day, that you felt that way about yourself, that it was your fault. So I did seek out help, um, not only to stay, but also to help me devise some plans if it wasn't going to work. If that makes any sense at all. I felt like I needed some strategies and some plans to get out because I had nowhere to go, nowhere to turn
Mhm.
to. And by this point, you know, he had left his job, and uh, money was very, very tight on top of that. So I
So what was the turning point for you then to actually start a plan for exiting?
the turning point for me at that time was things continued to escalate. We lost our home. Uh, I had gone. He had finally allowed me to go back to work, because he wasn't working, and uh, things continued to escalate to the point that uh, I was worried about the children at home with him after school, especially our son. And I was seeing signs of whatever happened on Oprah show or any of those other talk shows was what was happening in our house when I came home at night. Um, and also the fact that it finally got to a point that there was a fight, and he grabbed me in the hallway. Our children were in their bedrooms, but they heard it and saw part of it, and my ribs ended up being cracked. And I knew at that point there was no salvage, and I had to get myself and as many of us as I could out, or somebody was really going to get hurt.
Yeah.
That's that's when it clicked.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wasn't going to be able to stay
So,
here.
absolutely. So, I think there usually is a moment in time when that preparedness and opportunity, that readiness, when we've accepted, and there's an opportunity when we dive off the proverbial diving board and we're still scared, but courage takes over, which is in spite of fear, right? And we do what has to be done. And so in this time, um, you had been having some counseling, which is wonderful, because I want everybody to hear that leaving is the most dangerous time in an abusive relationship. So having a plan in place. So tell us about the plan that you had been working on. What worked well with it? What did not? If you would share.
Had
If you have any
a
advice to listeners.
had a fantastic counselor, that I am so grateful for to this day. And he tried some counseling with both of us together, and that did not go well. Um, he helped me put together a plan along with my attorney. At that point, I'd made the decision to leave, and it was dangerous. I was able to get a court order, which is very important, if you're in the state of Alabama for sure, and other states as well. You can't just evacuate your home without forfeiting. And that's a shame because many, many people, male and female, get tragically hurt or fatally injured because they're forced to be in the same home together. Awful. So I did get a court order. Actually, the plan was that my ex-husband was asked to leave because he had family that he could go and stay with in North Alabama. He did. He took our daughter with him, and it was her choice to go. And I didn't love it, but I didn't fight it because that's her father. And we put a plan B together if he was not supposed to come back. And we put a plan B together in case he did. And of course he did. We knew he would. I had the trunk of the car already packed with what I could get in it, with a Mazda with a cracked head. And I requested that he leave. I called 911. He did not leave. And I gave both children the opportunity to come with me. And my son did, along with our Shih Tzu Belle. And I was very blessed to have some people that I worked with that I could go stay with. And I don't know what I would have done. I had $47 until I got paid. So that was the plan. And then he also walked me through all of the strategies and all of the plans for the aftermath, which is just as bad as getting to this point.
Yes.
So we had strategies for how to handle just about everything.
Okay. And let's talk a little bit about that because the show title is The Aftermath of Domestic Violence. Because, like I said, for me, the divorce itself was one thing, leaving the relationship was another. And I didn't share a lot about that story, but there's so much that in the aftermath. And I mentioned stalking, threats of suicide. There was an incident with a gun. Tell us about your experience in those type of things, the aftermath, and then let's talk about ourselves.
Okay.
But what was the aftermath, some of the experiences for you?
The aftermath was awful, and it was horrible for my son. Um, that causes me the greatest pain. But he tried to remove him from school. He lost visitation privileges. The divorce itself took over 2 years. He didn't follow one. It didn't matter what the rules were. And that's where I went into this being naive, because I thought if the law told you you had to do something or that you couldn't do something, there were consequences for that. Not really, because there's so much of this, and that they can't
Yeah.
govern individual behavior. So he could stalk me, he could frighten our son, he could beat on my door. I'd call the police. I got to be really good friends with the police, and often on Saturday mornings when he would try to come remove Cortland from our son from the house, he would. I'd have donuts for him because I knew we were going to be calling him. It was. He tried to pull him off the football field. He interfered with every aspect of his life that he could. He'd lose visitation. Then he'd sue me again over something else. And in Alabama, you can sue anybody as many times as you want, as long as it's a different issue. He sued me one time over braces. He Each time you have to have a mediator, a guardian ad litem, a counselor. Um, my resources, even though I was doing well at the time, couldn't hold up, and that was part of his motive. That and anything he could do to hurt Cortland or our son and upset him, was the way to get back at me. So it was many years until our son turned 18 of aftermath.
Right. What I want the audience to hear is that the power control dynamic is what they're looking for. And they will continue to try to dominate through the child, if nothing else. So that's what was happening in your case, Leanne. But how has the aftermath also of domestic violence affected you emotionally, physically? Eventually, the lawsuit stopped. Like you said, once your son turned 18, what's the aftermath that you've experienced since?
Well, that is also a good question. And there's positives and there's negatives. Obviously, I still have a strong reaction to even talking about it. And this is the first time I've ever talked about it openly in public. And that is because unfortunately he passed away a few months ago. And for the first time, it is safe to talk about it. If I can do anything to prevent this from happening to anybody else or get somebody out, I want to do that, even if it's hard to tell the story. But I obviously still have a strong reaction to it. I still have strong triggers and some post traumatic stress that then does affect a lot of aspects, many aspects of your life that you have to learn. And we had a lot of good coaching sessions on learning how to manage those things. The positive
Right.
sides of it are that I've learned that I was stronger than I ever dreamt I was. Um, and
I love it.
I have a lot of respect for how I tried to handle the situation, tried to protect the children, tried not to turn them against their father. Um, and I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of what I was able to do, and I'm proud that I was able to get us out.
I love that. I'm glad that you see that in yourself. I know that you've had some physical issues and ailments, anxiety, stress residue, if you will, is one aftermath that I found. And emotions can stick in the body. And I know you've worked really hard at learning somatic exercise and different things to help yourself release the things that have been stuck in your body and help yourself heal. And I'm proud of you for doing all of that as well. As you say, there's still triggers that will come up. I experience those as well. Not so much. I think people don't understand because they minimize their experience. Like you and I both said, at least he never hit me. We didn't have the classic black eye. We had these battered souls and these different physical experiences and true psychological batterings, if you will. But um, these learning to manage. But one thing I hear common in people's experiences also, or they'll ask me, clients will ask, why do I keep attracting these people? How do I end up with these? Right. So we also, and I had a series, I think, after that first friendship of like roommates and stuff before the first husband, the wolf, as I call it, and before I learned to value myself again, to write myself, as I say. Have you have you you've had this exposure in it since childhood, whereas I did not. Have you found in life that you've been exposed to controlling manipulative relationships outside of intimate relationships? And if so, have you learned to manage those?
That's a great question. I was so blessed to have found a relationship, which we talked about earlier, for more than a decade with someone who was kind and thoughtful and treated me with such goodness and respect. And what a blessing that was. So I haven't experienced a, an intimate relationship like that again. Um, but I have experienced it in my work life and in some cases just out in the world in general. And I have gone, geez, what is up here? But I think two things are important, and I'm a work in progress. And I think that recognizing You get better at recognizing the signs, even though you may not want to. You get better
Yeah.
at recognizing the signs and building those boundaries, which was something I was never good at even after the relationship, because I have a lot of naivete. I just do. Um, it, that is something that I've gotten much better at, and coaching has
Yeah.
helped that a lot. The other side of it is I have had to learn and face and realize that there are going to be these people everywhere, no matter where you are, where you go, and different kinds of people. There's even different types of narcissists, different kinds of people that want control for whatever reason. And if you didn't recognize it, or for whatever reason you didn't have a choice but to be in that situation, then you have to learn how to manage it and manage the reactions that you have to it and manage how you allow it to affect you. And that's very difficult.
Yeah, that's right. I'm so glad you said that. Boundaries is the key word here, people. It's learning boundaries. And boundaries aren't for other people, they're for ourselves. So learning about yourself, really connecting to your values, and then putting a metaphorical fence around yourself so you know who to let in, who to let out, what you believe, what you stand for, so that you are not knocked over in life. So you can keep that. That so you do see the signs, or if you miss it when you do see it, how you manage yourself in it in relationships. And Leanne, I know this is your first time to speak out loud, and I'm so grateful and proud of you for that too. I know this took courage, and I know that that Dawn's passing somehow opened that gate. I know that you actually have another opportunity to speak coming up soon at the University of Alabama, where you're a graduate from. And tell me a little bit about that, because I know that that takes some courage too, not just because this is all new for you, but that's something very significant. Tell us about that.
Well, there are some women's studies courses that train individuals to be counselors, coach, and their deal with this issue of domestic violence. And so we don't have any details worked out. It's just been something that we've talked about, and I'm hoping that in the future I can pursue this in a way that's meaningful and has value, not only to the people like you who are going to be coaching and working with individuals in these situations, but individuals who are going through it as well. And if anything, I can say about my experience, I'm not a coach, but if there's anything I can say about my experience that can help another person, then that's awesome.
Thank you for that. Well, it's time for us to wrap up for today, but I really appreciate your being here and sharing your stories. And what I want to say to our audience really is, I hope that if you took anything away today, is that you heard there's different reasons why people stay. It's not as easy as simply walking away. And rather than ask, why did you stay? Or why are you staying? Ask them how you can help. I think if you have someone in a relationship that you recognize as abusive, that you care about, rather than asking us questions, remind them of who they are, remind them of their strengths, stay connected to them, find a way to not let them be isolated from you. Abusive relationships are extremely complex. It is about power and control. But for the survivor, for the one to be able to get out, they've got a lot to consider. And there's a process of them coming to face their reality, and a process of them starting to relinquish what's happening to them, and to get to that place to be able to step away. And the average times it takes for someone to truly get away is 7 times, according to the National Domestic Abuse Hotline, or Domestic Violence Hotline, I believe it is. And again, the most dangerous time to leave, dangerous time, is when someone tries to leave. Okay. 75% of all serious injuries and abusive relationships occur then. Dan has put up the hotline information, www.thehotline.org, 1-800-799-SAFE. They have resources for everyone, even for the abusers. If you want, you also can get help for yourself. You do not have to continue the cycle. If you abuse, you were probably abused. You can break the cycle. We have those resources. There are expert advocates at the hotline 24/7 to help you, and they can help you create that safety plan as well, that exit plan that Leanne was blessed to have a counselor help her with and get her out. You have to do the work at your work. You may have an employee assistance program where there's counselors, therapists, coaches available to you. If you cannot afford to go privately, you can reach out to me at skyviewcoaching.com as well. I can try to guide you. You can work with me, or I can help you find someone. There's my QR code on screen as well. You can scan that. And you can also find my book, The Gift of Shift, when you go to that QR code. And in the story, The Gift of Grits, I share about leaving my marriage and the courage it took. Leanne and I are here today really to tell you that while it isn't easy to leave, it's worth it, and you're worth it, and your healing journey will be unique to you, but your soul will heal, right, Leanne?
That's absolutely right.
All right, everybody. As we conclude this episode of Soul CPR, I just want you to remember that healing is not a linear journey. It's a process of profound transformation. And if today's stories resonated with you, please share this podcast with someone that you know could use a lifeline of their own. So subscribe, rate, and leave a review to help us reach more hearts. And you can connect with me on my social media. It's at Skyview Coaching on Facebook, or at Ann Papayotti on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram, and all those places. And if you're interested in having Leanne or I speak to a group or an organization about our stories or domestic violence, you can reach Leanne through me, and we will be happy to do that. So until next time, may you find strength and courage in your vulnerability, and just as I say every time, breathe deeply, love openly, and live soulfully. Good day, everybody.
This has been Soul CPR with host Ann Papayotti. Breathe life back into your spirit with each episode, where she and special guests explore the relationships that hurt us and discover that healing can only begin with you. Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.